Yes, nice to meet you also. So now we are live,
Okay.
and so we are with comrade Vijay Prashad from India. And firstly, I would like to apologize you for the name of my channel, because name of my channel, it is Rebirth of Communism, and it is the translation of my Polish channel, which I started 3 years ago, Odrodzenie Komunizmu in Polish language. It is because in Poland we have once a strong communist movement. We had socialist state, and in Poland I want to rebuild this. But I one time I heard your speech about the crisis in the Western imperialist countries, left in these countries, and you say correctly that this crisis after the fall of the Soviet Union, it is only the left in the communist parties in the imperialist countries, and in your country and other countries from the global south, the communist movement is strong. And when I say about this rebuild, it is Europocentric. So,
Not really. If I can ask you to take your apology back, because there's a difference between the experience in the USSR, former USSR, and
yes.
the former Eastern European people's democracies. Because here, after the former USSR in the Gorbachev era, after they essentially dismantled themselves, let's be clear, the Soviet Union didn't collapse. Gorbachev and that clique surrendered to the West. After that, there was a kind of enforced destruction of the left in Eastern Europe. There was a forced, I mean, whether it's Hungary, which anyway was one of the most fascistic places before 1948, 47, 48, or Poland. I mean, there was a forced destruction. It's not that you had some Euro communist deviation that brought your collapse on. This last week, we released a text with EFDDR, which is an institute in Berlin, which is starting to revise our look back at the history of the German Democratic Republic, which, in my opinion, has been very poorly understood in the post GDR period from 1989, 91 onward. A very poor history of what happened during that period. And I very much hope, Mikhail, that someday we'll have a reassessment of the Polish experience as well, which doesn't look back at Poland's experience with the left and say, well, it was a big disaster. Because what came afterwards is, well, I won't even characterize it, because people know what it's like after the fall of the Eastern European communist state system. But I think it is different. It's not exactly Eurocentric. It's a different orientation.
Yes, so I can say that Poland today, it is catastrophe. It is why I am not living in Poland. I am living in France, because the living and working in Warsaw, for example, it is my city. I earned 3,350 euros. And if you want to rent a house in Warsaw, you have to pay minimum 400 euros. So you say that you see that it is impossible for the lived in Poland. But firstly, I would like to ask you: could you present your activity, your books which you published, and also the communist movement in India, the class struggle in India? I heard about the biggest strike in the world. The 250 million people are striking, and also could you say something about the socialist state in the south of India, the Kerala state? Because I'm very impressed that in the time of the coronavirus, the state in the south of India is it is proud for the socialism, that there is the people are not dying from the COVID-19 like in other states in India.
That's a lot of things to cover. Let me start by saying that I've been for a very long time associated with the communist movement in India. I'm a member of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, which is the largest communist party. We have about 1 million members, of maybe several tens of million members of our mass organizations. That is to say, women's organization, youth, students, agricultural workers, trade unions, farmers, and so on. A range of mass organizations associated with our movement, with our party. I was started my career as a journalist. I got a teaching job after I finished a PhD by accident, and I've written a lot about a lot of things. And so I don't want to spend too much time going into that. Maybe I'd like to mention two things. I've been very interested over the course of these last couple of decades on the fate of the global South. And I've written two books about the history of the global South. One is called The Darker Nations, which is about the history of the Third World Project from 1928 to 1983. That's the middle of the debt crisis, when many of the countries like Mexico and so on went into great current account, black holes. They couldn't sustain themselves. And the second book picked it up in from the late 1970s and comes to the present, and that's called The Poorer Nations. It tells the history, in a sense, of BRICS, of the rise of the Bolivarian movement in South America, and so on. This has been something I'm very interested in, this history of the global South in its own terms, you see, not as a failure or as a mirror of something happening in the United States or the other. This is trying to tell its own story in its terms. The second thing I've spent a lot of time writing about is the history of the left in different parts of the world, including in India. I wrote a book called No Free Left, which is the futures of Indian communism. You see, it's not easy, Mikhail, to build the left, any part of the world, at any time. Because, you see, we are not utopians. We don't believe that you just have to have good ideas. We believe that a society advances when the material conditions are sufficiently advanced. The productive forces have to be advanced. And as you advance productive forces, there comes a clash between the standards of production and then the standards of living of the vast mass, the workers. That clash leads to a kind of revolutionary break. The problem was, in our societies, this is equal to the Russian Empire, the Tsarist Empire. That's why the first revolution doesn't take place in an advanced industrial country. It takes place in a peasant society. So from the revolution of October 1917 to Mongolia to Vietnam 1945, China 49, Cuba 59, these are all poor countries that had socialist revolutions. And the interesting thing is, in a colonized situation where you're under colonialism, they were not advancing the productive forces. So Marx's prediction in that case didn't apply in the colonial world. The productive forces were not being advanced, and therefore we were not going to be able to wait for somebody to advance the productive forces before you can have a revolution. That was the genius of Lenin. Lenin said, no, the revolutionary must break through. You have the revolution, and then the revolutionary constructs socialism by doing two things at the same time: advancing the productive forces and socializing the means of production. That's made socialism so much more difficult. It's one thing to have a revolution in Germany or Britain or in France or in the United States. Much easier, much harder to have it in these poorer peasant societies. And our actual experience of building socialism is there in those parts of the world, not there, in the rich parts of the world, the advanced industrial society. So to understand the communist movement in India, one has to understand the theory that develops out of this conjuncture, this situation. It's not enough to keep reading Marx. It's not enough to keep, reading the canons of Western Marxism, whether it's Althusser or the Frankfurt School or whatever it is. They don't answer any of our questions, because our questions are rooted in the fact, how do you build socialism from a desperately poor place with very few resources, where wealth is not there? So I've spent a lot of my time working on that, and it's out of that concern that I got involved with the International People's Assembly. and we created a research institute called Tricontinental Institute for Social Research, which emerges with the mandate essentially to build the theory of our own movements, not to derive the theory from academic thought, but to build the theory from our own movements. And that's what we've been, as a practice, as a collective project, that's what we've been doing.
Yes, I said that I heard that in India, when the British came into India with capitalism, they not only built the productive forces in India, but they destroyed the agriculture in India. That after when the British came and this India became the colony of India, it was the famine crisis very often. So we see that this waiting when the productive forces in the colony will be very, very strong is utopian. And I ask you this question about your activity in the writing books, because in other speeches which you said, because last week I heard many of your speeches, you said about the globalization, that globalization, it is that everybody in the world have to read the Marxists from USA, from the France and other, but nobody read the Marxist theoretician from global South. And I think that I know the anti-capitalist intellectual from Western countries, and I know people like Chomsky, and it is for me that I didn't read any of your book, but I think that all of your book are better than this book of this intellectual from the imperialist countries, because it is because of the perspective. They are in the bubble of the richest places in the world, and all this time they said it is not true socialism, and it is also not true socialism, and all the time they criticize other revolutionaries, other socialists, but they do nothing in the USA. And so it is why because you have library in New Delhi, yes?
Well, we are a book publishing house called Leftward Books, and we've been going for 20 years. We also have a bookstore called Mayday Bookstore, where we, have a very nice array of books, and there's a little place where there's a black box theater that our comrades at Jannatya Manch, People's Theater Group, operate. It's called Studio Safdar, named after one of our comrades who was killed in 1989. In fact, my colleague Sudhanva Deshpande wrote a terrific book about the life of Safdar Hashmi called Halla Bol, which Leftward Books published. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to you to say it's not worth reading, people. There are different concerns. You see, people in different countries will obviously produce different theories. My point is mainly that nobody's theory is universal. That you can't take the concerns of, say, Slavoj Žižek and say that his concerns are identical to the concerns of somebody in Papua New Guinea. Theories are built out of a conjuncture. They are not built out of from a God's perspective. We don't have access to God's perspective. And of course, Žižek could go and learn about the context of Papua New Guinea and derive the theory out of that. I'm not saying that because he's a Slovenian, he can't write from Papua. I don't mean that at all. I don't agree with that kind of identity politics. But you have to locate yourself. You have to learn about somebody's struggles and so on. And that has to shape and form your interests. You see, my great problem with a lot of Western left thinking is that in the 1980s, even before the Soviet Union wrapped up, in the 1980s, you began to get this whole seam of post-Marxist writings, exemplified by the book by Ernesto Laclau and Chantal Mouffe called Hegemony and Socialist Strategy. Well, there's something deeply wrong with that book. Firstly, it uses Gramsci in a way that I don't agree. Gramsci was a communist militant. Gramsci was interested in a revolution. Gramsci was not interested in widening democracy in some liberal direction. He's not a liberal. He was a revolutionary. He asked himself in jail, why is it that we who were building the Italian communist movement, the trade union movement, other people's struggles, and so on, why were we so easily defeated by the fascists? That's the question he's asking himself. And then he suggests that, okay, in order to understand that, I need concepts. And the concept hegemony is one that he draws from Russia, actually. Hegemony comes from the Russian debates around how to capture the so-called hearts and minds of people. And he draws the concept hegemony. It's not original to Gramsci. Then he goes on and he thinks about culture. And he says, let's look back at our culture. There are hierarchies embedded in our culture that the culture immediately, because it comes from this feudal hierarchical thing, elements of Catholicism and fate, the desire for a strong leader, the culture favors the fascists. The left, in a way, has to fight against our culture, reform culture, democratize culture. Gramsci's thinkings are hugely useful for a revolutionary, to think about the role of culture as an obstacle for our advance. Well, Chantal Mouffe and Ernesto Laclau take it in a completely different direction. Their book it's called Hegemony and Socialist Strategy. There's no socialist strategy in it. It's a liberal account. And so these post-Marxists show up with a kind of political orientation to the world. They talk about rights and things like that. But Marxism isn't about politics alone. It's not about advancing human rights. Politics for Marxists is about the material conditions as much as it's about these other elements of equal rights and so on. Because equal rights, without the right to food, the right to shelter, the right to medical care, without advancing the productive forces, there's no point having political rights. Look at India. India, half the population is in poverty, but they all have equal rights. What's the point of equal rights? China has just abolished absolute poverty, lifted 800 million people out of poverty. That to me is a far more significant advance. But somebody like Laclau and Mouffe, they look at China and they'll say, oh my God, it's horrifying. You see, because they don't understand what it means to live in wretched poverty. And that a communist must understand the material conditions of life. We are not just about, ideas and so on. I work for an institute whose core mission is to advance the struggle in the battle of ideas. So I don't think ideas are not important. We understand that culture is a huge resource and a huge impediment. We don't minimize the role of culture, but the problem of the material forces, that must not be set aside. And that's what makes something like Laclau, Mouffe, many of these post-Marxists, it makes them, in end of the day, liberals. They are not actually post-Marxists. They are pre-Marxists. They return to the period before Marx. They sound like utopian socialists or liberals. And that's the kind of corruption of theory in the West. There's a theoretical problem. It's not that it's a problem because it's produced in the West. It's a problem because of what it is, which is essentially it's liberalism that wears the mask of the left. And that's what I'm interested in, at least having a conversation about.
Okay, and I heard also one of your speeches when you said many times about Rosa Luxemburg, and I'm proud about Rosa Luxemburg because it is one of the most famous women who was born in Poland. She was active in Polish socialist movement, but she is most known by her activity in the German communist movement. So 1 year ago, in the Zamość, in the house where Rosa Luxemburg was born, there was a monument which was written that here in this building Rosa Luxemburg was born. And also there are many other monuments of Rosa Luxemburg. There are the name of the streets in Poland. And now we have all these psychopaths here, anti-communists who are ruling in Poland, and they want to destroy the history. They smash all these things, and also they smash this monument in the house of Rosa Luxemburg in Zamość. So So I want to ask you, could you and your comrades from India and from other communists which you know to make solidarity international against Polish government, because you see she is the Marxist theoretician known all over the world, and in Poland they want to smash her from history.
Well, my younger daughter's name is Rosa, and Rosa Luxemburg has meant a great deal, I think, in our traditions. One of the reasons, Mikhail, is because she always took the colonial question seriously. There's a lot that Rosa Luxemburg and Lenin shared. They both took colonialism very seriously. You see, when the Easter Rising takes place in Ireland in 1916, it's Lenin and Luxemburg that support the Easter Rising. Many in the left movement, and I don't want to mention their names because I'll sound sectarian, oppose the Easter Rising. Lenin saw it as an anti colonial uprising. It's very important for people to understand that the instinct of Luxemburg, the instinct of Lenin was anti colonial. In fact, in her monumental work on the accumulation of capital, she makes the argument about the necessity of these non capitalist zones, what she called them. We may disagree with some of the formulations, but basically, she's talking about colonialism, the necessity of colonialism, the permanent status of so-called primitive accumulation, which Marx talks about in Capital. It doesn't just happen in the beginning. It keeps happening over and over again. You have theft from people, plunder, and so on. What's happening today in places like the island of Papua, West Papua and Papua New Guinea, and so on. So Luxemburg is a very important figure. At Leftward, in fact, we published a volume of Reform versus Revolution, her great critique of Edward Bernstein. And the introduction to that volume was written by Brinda Karat, who is one of the Politburo members of the Communist Party of India, Marxist, and is a leading member of the party, the CPIM. She wrote a very fine introduction to that volume of Rosa Luxemburg. We look up to the memory of Rosa Luxemburg. We celebrate the day of the murder of Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht by the Social Democrats in Germany in 1919. So one doesn't need to tell us that we must stand in solidarity. We will. Now the question is, tell us how. Give us the details. We will organize, whatever is necessary to stand in solidarity with the memory of Rosa Luxemburg against, the heirs of the fascists and the feudals and the oligarchs. Why should they get to determine the names of streets in Rosa Luxemburg's country? So let us know what we can do. We'll organize for it. Absolutely. She's an important person in the global left calendar and an important person in global left thought.
I think that the most important is that you show that communist movement exists, because in Poland they say all the time the lie that after fall of the Soviet Union it's over. The communism is over, and there are some old communists in Russia, but in a few years everybody die and it will be finished of communism. And when you speak that you are a member, or you were a member, the Communist Party in India, which is 1 million member, and you are capable to make a strike with 250 million people. So it is something which are scared for the Polish bourgeoisie, and I want that they are scared of that red flag isn't over.
Well, the thing is that the red flag is not even over in Poland, and the Polish bourgeoisie need to understand that. I mean, in time, movements will grow. It was, after all, Luxemburg who said that capitalism is a fatal system. It cannot exist eternally. It has flaws. And she proposed the view that there are two choices before humanity. On the one choice, I mean, look, frankly, if you go back and you look at her slogan, it will be a clarifying moment for people. What was the slogan? socialism or barbarism. Now, you have two paths forward. Capitalism is fatally flawed. Polish president, Mr. Andrzej Duda. What is Mr. Duda? Is Mr. Duda a socialist? No. Is Mr. Duda a barbarian? That's for the Polish people to decide. What
Yes,
are you
yes.
living in now? Are you living in a socialist country or in a barbaric situation? I would like to hazard an answer and say that I think it's barbarism. Well, look to Rosa, look to your heritage, fight for something different than this nonsense. So the Polish bourgeoisie need not be afraid of the red flags in India. Red flags will unfurl one way or the other from one end of Poland to the other. It's either that or you create barbarism for a century. Nobody can tolerate barbarism for a century.
I think that we can say that this socialism or barbarism is very important now in Poland because in last week Poland have the biggest number of people dying from COVID-19 for 1,000 person in all the world. We were the champion. We were the champion, and in the socialist times, Polish health system was very, very good. We have good hospitals and we have good medicines, and also in Polish university there are the students from African countries and other countries from South who are coming to Poland. They are learning how to be a doctor, how to be a nurse, and they coming back to their country and helping their. Now it's privatized. It's after privatization, it's total catastrophe, and it is why we have barbarity. So the answer is today here in Poland with these people who died.
The answer is today, as you say. And, when we look around the world, Mikhail, we can see doctors from China, doctors from Cuba, these two countries traveling abroad with medical internationalism. We see, meanwhile, vaccine nationalism in the United States, in Canada, in many European countries. They are hoarding vaccines, hoarding medicines. Their doctors aren't going abroad. You want a choice between socialism and capitalism. These are the choices. You either have a society like Cuba, a very poor country. Right now there is an international campaign to raise 20 million syringes to send to Cuba so the Cubans can be vaccinated. But of course, Cuba, meanwhile, is exporting doctors all over the world. In many COVID wards in the Caribbean, they would have shut down without Cuban doctors, whether it's in Jamaica, Barbados, one country after the other, one sees Cuban doctors. So I'd just like to say that the choice is there for people to see. What would you prefer, to live in a society where, like in India, where people are dying on the street, essentially, COVID-19, total catastrophe in India, public health spending by the government are around 1% of GDP, meanwhile, weapons spending much greater. I mean, this should be a basic choice. The problem is, Mikhail, the real problem is, it's not our arguments. It's not that reality isn't showing us the correct path. It's that we are in a battle of ideas. We are fighting against a suffocating media. We are fighting against a landscape which has taken refuge in anti-Chinese propaganda. We're fighting a rearguard battle of ideas. That's the problem, is that it's not that reality isn't clear. Reality is clear, it's clarifying. The problem is we can't reach people because the suffocation of corporate media is so great that it's hard to get out there.
Okay, you didn't answer a question about Kerala. Could you present what is Kerala state and the communist government there?
Right. So Kerala is one of the states in the Indian Union. It's not a country by itself. It's a state of 35 million people. So it's quite large. It's not a small state. It's now governed by the Left Democratic Front, which is a unity, a coalition. The largest force in the Left Democratic Front by far is the Communist Party of India, Marxist. That's the party to which I belong. The Chief Minister of Kerala, Pinarayi Vijayan, is a party member. He's a member of my party. So our party has ruled Kerala for the past 5 years, and in rotation for 5 years before the previous 5 years, and so on. there was an election. The results will come out on May 2nd. It's likely for the first time since 1980, our government will repeat and come in for a second term because it's been very popular. Now, what has Kerala done? You see, over the period of the communist movement in Kerala, the communists pushed the needle of the state toward the left in terms of the culture and social development. So even when the non-left comes to power, that is the right, led by the Congress party, they can't take policies that are essentially against the policies that the left has put in place, although they try. And sometimes they succeed, but they can't completely change the character of the state. So in Kerala, unlike the rest of India, public health infrastructure has not been completely eroded in the previous government. This government has strengthened it again. The government has strengthened the forms of government delivery, how government can deliver social goods to the public and so on. Also in Kerala, the mass organizations are strong. Trade unions, women's organization, cooperative movements are strong. There is a cooperative called Kudumbushri, which has something like 8-9 million members. Just this one cooperative. It's all women members. And they make all kinds of things. During the pandemic, the cooperative called Kudumbushri started making hand sanitizer and masks. Mass organizations went into public places to feed people and so on. And then the government acted with great seriousness of purpose, testing people, isolating them, contact tracing, and so on. So the government took a rational approach towards the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's not just government. You see, communism isn't just the state acting, it's also public action. And that's what you see as really an important part of the social development of Kerala, is that the mass organizations were involved. I think that's important. And I mean, look, let's not exaggerate things. COVID-19 still struck Kerala. Kerala is a highly mobile place, very much linked to developments in the Gulf, lots of migrant workers and so on. So COVID-19 hit Kerala pretty hard. It's not that it was totally immune. So I don't want to exaggerate things. And while the rest of India is struggling with oxygen supply, Kerala has been sending oxygen to the rest of India because public sector oxygen manufacturing in Kerala was built up. On the other hand, there is a problem, some problems in Kerala as well in terms of healthcare infrastructure, because this pandemic is quite hard. It's difficult to beat, and in a congested kind of country like India, it's not that India is overpopulated in terms of density of population, but it's congested, in cities and so on. The working class live in congested areas. So the spread has been quite rapid and quick. I think that's something. But in Kerala, the government is really serious about dealing with it. It's not been like the government in the UK and so on, which took a, quite a lazy perspective to the pandemic. No, it was quite the opposite. And the Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan and the Health Minister Shalja Teacher are both extremely popular because they did such a good job in the pandemic.
We are live now, and in the chat there was a question from the comrade Hellas. He was the author of the YouTube channel. He's from Greece, and he wanted to join to our conversation. So he's here. Welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am a Marxist from Greece, and I would just like to enter the discussion and at the end maybe ask Dr. Pradas maybe a question or two.
It's up to you, Mikhail. It's your show, and welcome.
Yes. I want to build the international relations, and I think the internationalism, it is the most important thing for the communists. And now, before 1 week before 1st May, it is the time for the building this. So in the same time, I send invitation for you and Comrade Hellas. Now he's here. So if he won't ask question, ask. If not, I will ask other question. Do you know Oscar Lange?
I don't really know that literature. Oscar, you mean, isn't he part of the Frankfurt School?
No. He's the Marxist from Poland who came to India. And in India, when the India, I heard, I don't know it is true or not, but it is him who collaborating with government of India to build a little leftist perspective for the economy of your country. And I heard that he's famous in India, but no, don't know, because he is the one of the most famous Marxist economists from Poland. So it is why I ask.
Yeah, I don't. I'm sure that there are people in India who know him, particularly professional economists and so on. But I happen to not know about him. I mean, I can see that he's was a member of the Workers' Party and so on, and responded to Mises and that Hayek school. But I don't know that at all.
Okay. It's
Sorry, I mean the only Polish person I know, and I don't know, your opinions of him will not be the same as mine probably, is that I, as a young person, encountered, of course, Kapuscinski, and I was enthralled by some of his writings, particularly on Iran. And then I read as much as I could find on Kapuscinski, including, of course, the great book on Ethiopia, his travels in Africa, the soccer war, and so on. And I understand people have misgivings about him, but man, he was a really adventurous character, and he wrote some fantastic stories. So I greatly admire Kapuscinski.
So I can say that he was in the time of socialist Poland, he was one of the famous journalists from Poland. And he died, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like this. But a few years before he died, the new government, ultra-right, they started to fame him. They said that if you are traveling in the time of socialism, it is because you are collaborating with the Polish secret police, and you are the member of the Communist Party, you are communist, and because you are the member of the Communist Party, we don't publish your books. And they started to make campaign against him, write articles, show in the media. People started, and he was very, very old. And I think that it is why he died a little before because it was very, very disgusting that they take an old guy and started to make campaign against him. But he is famous for his work, not writing about Poland, but writing about the things which was abroad the Poland. And other Polish people, do you know Felix Dzierżyński, for example?
No, I mean, my knowledge of Poland is very sparse, I'm afraid, and I just know too little about it. As I said, my interest, I'm mainly am a journalist and a writer and so on, and I'm not really a specialist in anything to do with Eastern Europe and so on. But the two Poles that I know intimately in terms of their writings, one is Luxemburg and the other is Kapuscinski. Pretty limited, I'm afraid. There's one more writer that I read his major 3-volume work, and that's Kolakowski, the main currents of Marxism. But he was a kind of non-Marxist, maybe even a little bit of an anti-Marxist, but he could write beautifully. So his 3-volume work was quite beautiful. The other person, of course, was what's his name? Isaac Deutscher, who has a complicated relationship with our movements, very complicated. But Deutscher was a very thoughtful person, and even though I have differences with a lot of the orientation, I very much enjoyed reading at least the first volume and a part of the second volume of his biography of Trotsky. I thought that was very well handled. And I know Deutscher was a member of the Polish party, and he had differences and so on, but I don't really know much about either him or those differences. My access to Poland, where I've never been, is mainly through the books of these very few people.
Okay, I can say that it's today I made a conversation also with Professor Bruno Drwęski, and we spoke about the situation in the Polish United Workers' Party in 1950s, and in the last 20 minutes of this conversation, we spoke about the intellectual who were very, very young, and when they started to be ultra radical Stalinists like Kołakowski, and after 1956 they started to be revisionist, and after 1970s they started to be anti-communist. We didn't say he said his name, but it was all generation the people who in the beginning of the 1950s, when they have struggled in the universities against these old intellectuals reactionary, they were young, radical, and they made very good job. But this book which you mentioned, it was in the time when Kołakowski he started to be anti-communist, not so he has a knowledge, but the objective of this book, it is destroy the communist movement.
Well, exactly. I mean, the point is he was a wonderful writer and he knew the texts of which he was writing, but his general orientation was anti-Marxist, his general orientation. But it's interesting that when you look at a person like that, their early affiliations cannot be so easily dismissed. So, in fact, however much he was against the tradition he was writing, it was also his own tradition. And there are sections where he's writing in the first volume about Marx, which are very beautifully written. And also, I think, quite close to a good description of Marxism, because that was his early orientation, if you see what I mean. You know, it's similar with Deutsche. I tried once to read bits of Deutsche's biography of Stalin, what he was going to write a book about Stalin. And even whatever his critical orientation was, because he comes out of that tradition, he can't uproot himself completely. So the book is quite interesting, even though, you know, it's difficult to read because his judgments are very harsh, a bit too harsh in many cases. So yeah, I mean, my own exposure to Polish radicalism and Polish radical history is very minimal. In fact, I've been trying to school myself a little bit. I've been spending the recent period reading a little about Hungary, a country of which I know very little. And recently, I had a conversation with somebody in Romania, a publisher, who we are drawing into. He's going to be part of his publishing house Ideas is going to be part of the International Union of Left Publishers. And it's interesting also to learn about Romania because, my God, how little we know about Romanian communism. You know, he was telling me how in the 1970s, there was a discussion by mayors in Romania, small town mayors, about eco-socialism, how to create an eco-socialist city, you know, how to create a city, a socialist city that understands the limits of resources and so on. I thought that's fantastic. Like we need to revive those histories, you know, and not allow the way the West has mischaracterized Romania as some sort of ghastly, police state and so on. As I said, we've done this in collaboration with EFDDR on the text already published called Risen from the Ashes, available in English, Spanish, Portuguese, and German. I hope people have a look at it. That's available at thetricontinental.org. You can see it at our website, also at EFDDR.
About Romania, I can say that there is also the YouTube channel and synth internet named The Barricade. It was created by the Maria Czernat from Romania and Bojan Stanisławski from Bulgaria and Poland, because he is Bulgar who lived in Poland. I collaborate with them. and they all the time now they try to build the relations between the countries like Bulgaria, Romania, Serbia, Czechia, Ukraine, Poland. And if you are interested about the Eastern Europe, go there because they speak English much better than me.
No, Mikhail, I don't want to go there. In fact, they have published my writing. What I would like is for you to introduce me to them, and let's have a private conversation, not like this.
Okay. Oh,
Private
yes.
conversation and talk about how to advance our thinking.
Yes, of course. I will send the message.
Yes.
So, Comrade Hellas all the time don't speak. Maybe I will ask you question about Greece. What is your commentary about the situation in 2015 when the European Union, the Troika, destroyed the Greece? They wanted to make crisis in Greece and punish Greece because of referendum anti how to say anti politic of austerity.
I wanted to ask something, Dr. Prasad, but I guess I will go first and I will reply to your question. First of all, Greece as a country was the 25th largest economy in the world in this period. We were a very large country by export, and we had a limited tourism and quality services. When the 2008 recession in the United States came and struck as a heat wave into Europe, it caused a global financial crisis. Greece had a particular problem compared to other countries. We had a large deficit. We had the largest deficit in Europe. And when these austerity measures came, all of Europe tried to cut their budget. Greece was forced to cut a large portion of their budget, which caused an economic recession. Because, as we know, when you limit your expenses, this means cutting wages, cutting pensions, raising taxes. It limits the purchasing power of the people. So this, as a result, destroyed the Greek lower and middle classes, and as a result, a lot of Greeks were against the European Union. In 2015, January, the left-wing party Syriza, which is the coalition of the radical left, was elected in power. This was the first time in Greece that a left-wing party won the election, and they were sent to negotiate with Europe. And although the negotiations were doing fine, and we had the economist, I'm sure maybe Mr. Prasad will know him, Yanis Varoufakis. He's amongst the 100 most influential thinkers and intellectuals in the world, and a world-renowned economist. He was leading the negotiation as an economic minister, the Ministry of Economy in Greece, and he was achieving to win from Europe. But the discussions were sabotaged. They dropped our credit ranking. Nobody was willing to borrow to Greece, and all our banks were run out of money. And Europe threatened the European Central Bank threatened with not printing any money. So as a result, in 2015, we had the referendum in which no won. 69% of Greeks voted against it, and as a result, the left-wing government was unwilling to pass this result, sadly, because they thought that if this result came and we cut our link to the European Union, this would mean that the Greeks will be impoverished because banks didn't have any more money. We will go on our national currency that will be instantly devalued. So they opted not to do it. They resigned, and the people voted for them again. And from then, we continued this harsh neoliberal policy of austerity. Ideologically, I think this was a mistake. This destroyed Greece even more. But pragmatically, and speaking as a Greek, I think it was a very harsh opinion to take. A lot of people, after that, distanced themselves from the left wing. They thought they were liars, and they lied on them. But I think they had little options. It was actually bankruptcy or harsh austerity. And at the end, they chickened out because the majority of Europeans were against us. That's what I have to say. So ideologically, it would be good if we didn't do it, but pragmatically, at least we are not searching from the bins or something. That's my input to your question, Mikhail. Now, Dr. Prasad, you spoke about the civil rights in India and China. You compared them. India being a democratic nation and having free elections and everything, but China being more authoritarian, managed to pull out a large portion of its population from poverty. In 2000, if I remember correctly, China had 90% poverty, and today about 5%. So they managed to pull millions out of poverty in 20 years. What is your opinion on democracy in India? Do you think it will be easier to build socialism upon a free market bourgeois democracy with limited free press? Or do you think it is easier to build it on an authoritarian regime? Because my main argument that I have with fellow comrades is that they think that oppressive regimes are easier to radicalize people, while I am more of the orthodox Marxist opinion that we need to build first capitalism, develop our economy and our means of production, our industries, go through an industrial revolution, and then build communism upon this bourgeois system.
Well, you must have missed what I said earlier then, because I talked about how that view of build capitalism first is impossible for colonized parts of the world. So that approach essentially tells countries like, Zambia, just keep waiting forever, because the productive forces will not be built as a result of the international division of labor and imperialism. So there will never be any advance for a country like Zambia unless it forces a situation, changes the conjuncture. You have a revolutionary breakthrough, and then they have to do two things: build the productive forces at the same time as they socialize production. Orthodoxy is not useful if it's not realistic. You understand? Look at all the countries with advanced productive forces. None of them have had a revolution. So that approach just doesn't make sense in the world. The historical sweep does not actually validate that position. United States, Canada, France, Britain, Germany. I mean, none of them have had even close to a revolution. And so Lenin's position is actually much clearer than the second international interpretation of Marxism. What you're calling orthodoxy is actually Kautsky. It's not Marx. It's the second international view that first you have to build capitalism and then you can advance to socialism. That's the view that Lenin savages in many of his writings, when he takes on what he calls renegade Kautsky and so on. So I don't actually accept that one has to build this to do that. Secondly, I don't accept the view that China is authoritarian. I visited China a lot. I, in fact, work at a Chinese institute. I've been in not only in the big cities, but in small parts of the country. The country is organized in a way that people outside don't understand. Is that there are, from neighborhood committees to regional district committees, people are organized in all kinds of ways. It's a highly organized country. Not only that, but it's also highly fractious. There are more industrial strikes in China than other parts of the world. People are forever demonstrating. You walk down the street in, say, Chongqing, you'll see somebody protesting something or the other. Cops don't come and arrest them immediately. This protesting culture is a part of their society. It's true, there are crackdowns. Sometimes the government says this is not allowed. They come and crack down. You can have criticisms of that. That's fine. You can say this is hardly bloody socialist legality. On what basis are you cracking down on that demonstration and not on this one? You understand? Those critiques can be made. Like I would criticize Stalin on the standpoint that in the 1937 purges, you violated the Constitution of 1925. The Constitution of 1925 of the Soviet Union is a very fine document. You should have allowed people their rights as given in the 25 Constitution. That's a legitimate critique of a socialist country. Criticize it from its own theories of legality and so on. So I don't accept that China is, in that sense, where people have no political rights, and in India they have political rights. Because in India, on the other hand, money has suffocated democracy. You can't run in elections unless you have vast amounts of money. That money comes to you from corporate entities. Often it's money that's so-called black money, not taxed money and so on, cash money given to people. And so I'm not even sure that the so-called liberal democratic states are actually democratic. The spirit of democracy is vacated in them. If you take the easy way in which in South America they're using so-called lawfare to delegitimize political candidates, remove Dilma Rousseff from office, not allow Lula to run in the election, the way in which money produces control over social media, so that in Brazil, I'm giving the Brazil example because I know it best. In Brazil, the campaign against Fernando Haddad when he was running against Bolsonaro was vicious. They were accusing him of pedophilia, things like that on social media, and delegitimizing him so that he couldn't. So he would have to then argue the terms that they had set, not set his own terms. You see what I mean? So where is the democratic spirit when lying is institutionalized and so on? So I think we need to actually not accept this, the liberal framework of free countries and not free countries. That's a Cold War mentality, the free world and the unfree world. We got to understand it differently. In what way are people capable of articulating a political project? Are they capable of articulating a project in China that's independent of the state? Are they capable of articulating an independent political project in India, outside the state and so on? That to my mind is a better way to see this than free and unfree or democratic and authoritarian. You understand? Those dyads or those dualities, that's part of the kind of Hannah Arendt Cold War thinking that was placed on us from the late 1940s onward. Hannah Arendt's book, Origins of Totalitarianism, published in 1951, made the argument that there is liberal freedom and then fascism and communism are the same and they are authoritarian. I reject that duality. I think that's a very mischievous framework. We need a different framework. And I think the framework I use is to see in different societies, are people capable of articulating a project? Can they organize? Can they build a political project, or are they shut down immediately? Many ways of being shut down. One is by the police, one is by the lack of resources. And we got to give lack of resources equal priority to repression by the police. In Greece today, you can probably say whatever you want, but you can't say it because nobody can listen to you. You'll have no access to the public sphere. You're competing against corporate television channels and so on, which completely suffocate your viewpoint. So that has to be a way to understand things. Are you able to articulate your view?
Thank you for asking me. Actually, in Greece, there is a big communist movement. The Communist Party of Greece is the fourth largest party in the parliament. And of course, there's like the coalition of the radical left and the movement for democracy, which is post-capitalist. These are more democratic socialist and post-capitalist parties. But the Marxist-Leninist party in Greece is fourth. So I think a big portion of the Greek population identify themselves as revolutionary socialists. Of course, there is a media control, and of course, there is a lot of private channels. But in Greece, we also have public television, which is very affordable and free. But again, one could argue that the ruling party will always have more influence in a public television that it is controlled by the government. On China, I admire their achievements on pulling people out of poverty, obviously. I'm not quick to criticize them, as I see, of course, there are human rights violations and brutality, but so is on capitalism. So I'm not quick to judgment. I'm not like those shouting liberals that think that China is doing this in Hong Kong, but they forget what America is doing in their own home countries, in Minneapolis and the Black Lives Matter movement. This was hardly my point, but what I'm seeing here is that you are saying the Kautsky point of view for developing the economy. And for example, Lenin, when he returned to Russia, this happened after the February Revolution and the ousting of the Tsar. And Lenin returned to a democratic Russia ruled by Kerensky and the liberal side and the Mensheviks. So I don't see how would it be easier for communist parties to gain power in a totalitarian capitalist fascist state that oppresses all opposition. And at the same time, Lenin himself at the beginning initiated the new economic policy and allowed for some privatization on peasant private owners and people who did not employ other people. Only a limited amount of, let's say, wage labor and small ownership. Lastly, if I'm not correctly, Doctor, when you say that Stalin violated the 1925 constitution, wasn't the 1936 constitution preceding the 1937-1938 purge? That's all.
Yeah, listen, I have to leave you soon because we've been together for an hour. So I'm not going to be able to go through all those things. Of course, there was a constitution in 1936, but don't forget, there were many arrests that preceded the 36 constitution that would have been based on the 24-25 constitution. But I'm not here to discuss history. I'm talking about a point of information. A point of analysis, how we judge a society. Do we judge a society based on a Cold War metric, or do we try to constitute our own judgment? That's the point I'm making. I'm not discussing history here. And the point that I would just reiterate is that one considers where revolutions happen and how they are built, and look and see what their theories are. I think that's the main point that I want to leave you with, Mikhail, that different parts of the world have had different histories, and I feel that people are too quick to think that their theory applies universally, which it may not and might not, and that's something to consider. So please stay in touch with me. I'm very keen to understand more about current left currents in Poland. Very keen. And I would be happy to have that meeting with the people at Barricades.
Okay, so thank you very much for your for your time, for the possibility that we are talking. I only want to say that I am from Poland and I am concerning from the stuff in Poland, but also I am now living in French and I am active in French movement, and I think that the situation which is now in French from since 2 years, that we have the biggest movement of the Yellow West. Every Sunday was beating by the police, many people arrested, and all the time they speak that the French is the country, the freedom of the democracy, and every Sunday, if you are wearing Yellow West in the Paris on other big street, you can be arrested and persecuted for this. So it is all this accusation about other countries that they are autocratic. I think that this is bullshit, that France today, in the time of Macron, it is neoliberal fascist state, and we have the police censorship of the internet, police censorship of the media, leftists, and but okay, I don't stop you for, so thank you encore one more time, and I hope that we will speak again when you have time.
Yes, and thank you so much for introducing me to Oscar Lang. I mean, I'm going to be reading more about him and other things. But don't forget, Barricade. Let's have that conversation.
Okay. I'll told them.
Great. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye. So, Comrade Karas, do you have time or no?
Sure, we have.
So it was not planned for today, but of course we have to. I want to use this situation that you are here.
I jumped into the discussion when I saw that you have this discussion with Dr. Prashad from India, and I wanted to exchange a couple of opinions and see his viewpoint.
And
being from India, we are from Europe, so we have a different viewpoint and mentality, definitely.
So maybe firstly, could you say something about your activity and the communist movement in Greece? Because for my perspective, it's very complicated. I know that there is KKA, the Communist Party of Greece. There is the Syriza, which was the federation of 10 parties of the radical left. And I heard also that they are the strong anarchist movement. They are in Athens one quarter that are ruling by anarchists. I don't know if it is true or not. That they are also Trotsky's organization. So tell us all those things which you say can say about the radical left in Greece today.
Let's go. First and foremost, there is the Communist Party of Greece, the largest party and member of the only Communist Party that is member of the parliament. It is the fourth largest party in Greece. It amassed about 5.6 of the popular vote. So it is fairly popular. It has a lot of popularity in certain islands with communist history, and of course areas around shipyards and industrial areas in northern Athens and Piraeus. Areas with refugee population, and I don't mean foreign refugee. I mean Greeks who have refugee ancestry, like Greeks who came from Egypt, Greeks who came from Turkey, ethnic Greeks who fled these regimes the last century. There is also a large anarchist movement that, of course, anarchists don't participate in election, but they have their headquarters in the Exarchia, let's call it neighborhood area of Athens. They are not organized like they're organized in smaller communes. They have their own organizations which are not a political party or a movement. They're not like strictly organized like the Marxist Leninists, as you understand. They are also fairly popular, and let's say they have an autonomous zone in Athens, the Exarchia neighborhood, that they technically rule over. There is also the Party for Mutiny, anti-capitalist left. They poll around 1% and 2%, but they haven't achieved to join the parliament yet. And a lot of smaller parties, such as Hodjaists, Maoists, Trotskyists, and the Party for the Reconstruction of the Communist Party, that is a mix of Maoism and hardcore like Stalinism. These are the officially communist parties. Syriza is a broad front that Syriza used to be the Communist Party split. They split over the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, with the Communist Party of Greece being Khrushchevites and supporting Khrushchev, and the ancestry of Syriza being against social imperialism and all that. So they split over, and Syriza continued its own path. Today, Syriza gained a lot of popularity. They jumped from 3% in 2012 to 36% in 2015, and they became the second largest party in the parliament due to a complete failure of social democratic parties in Greece and the change of the order, since they abandoned socialism and moved towards austerity, these parties. So Syriza gained popularity. Syriza is very broad. You can find from Maoists to democratic socialists to social democrats to radical anti-capitalists. It's a broad front, a broad alliance. But according to their plan, they are building democratic socialism in Greece, and they are planning ahead. They didn't change much, but now they're like in favor of staying within the European Union for now and participating with the Nordic left-wing parties. I think that's pretty much all about the left-wing movement in Greece.
And you are the member of one of this party?
I might be. I don't want to mark myself as a member here, because in Greece there is a lot of crackdown going from the right-wing government. I'm sad to say it, but in the last years, Greece went from being a very free and democratic country to having lower safety and democracy than Albania. So I don't want to, since I am a member of trade union, and I'm also in a university, I don't want to mark myself as any, if you allow me on public, as a party of any member. there being instances of even police brutality in Greece, so towards anarchists and left-wingers. So I don't want to bring it on right now.
Okay, I understand. But when you made your channel in Greek language, you don't have problems in Greece?
There is I can voice my opinion freely. We have free speech, but I don't want to mark myself as a certain party because first, I don't want the police to identify me, and second, I don't want other leftists that disagree with me on one aspect to say, what do you say here? We disagree on this. You should get out of the party, for example. I want to have my own opinions as well, and not being monitored either by fellow comrades or by an authority such as the state.
Okay, so now I would like to ask you a question which is very often asked to me, that because I am communist, but all the time they ask me, what do you think about Stalin? So I said that I respect Stalin. I respect Stalin because he was the communist. He was the first who built the socialism in the world. And also, when they want to me compare Stalin with Lenin or Stalin with Marx, I said that Stalin was the biggest one because he not only write something, but he built socialism, and he was the first one, in my opinion. So, and very often people ask me that Stalin he forget about the communists from Greece, that he was a treason. So what do you think about this? Could you say something about the civil war in Greece in the time of the Second World War and after Second World War? What's happened?
Now, this is the importance and exactly the reason why I told you that I don't want to identify with any party. Right now, I can say freely my opinion about Stalin. But 50 years ago, for example, in Greece, accept that we were right-wing junta, but even the communists started deleting members because they agreed with Mao or they agreed with Stalin. The Khrushchevite Soviet Union persecuted Stalinists and Maoists and other Hodjais, Ceausescu supporters, So it is fundamental that I have my own opinions. So I believe personally that Stalin was a great leader. You're right that he was the greatest leader, but I wouldn't say the greatest theoreticians. I say that Marx is first, and Lenin on theory. But Stalin continued the path on Lenin and Marx. He built Marxist-Leninism. And you're right, he was the first one who successfully built a socialist state and had rapid economic growth, took Russia from using horse plows to using nuclear energy, defeated the Nazi Germany, and created a safe socialist state to be. And of course, sadly, his successors, the Khrushchevites and Brezhnevites, stagnated the Soviet Union, and later Gorbachev put the last nail on the coffin and turned back on reformism and capitalism restoration. So I guess you're right. He was the greatest leader we ever had.
Yes, but could you say something about the civil war?
Oh, yeah, the civil war in Greece. Thank you, I forgot. Also, if I'm not wrong, Che Guevara was influenced by Stalin. He said
yes,
of course.
Was
the reason he became communist. After World War II, Europe was split in two. And Churchill and Stalin made these secret percentage agreements. He gave Stalin influence in Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, and Czechoslovakia. They split Yugoslavia 50-50 and Albania, and Stalin gave Churchill more influence in Greece. So I guess he traded Greece for Romania and Poland. So you guys got it, we didn't. This has been used by a lot of people on the right and the left as proof of treachery, but is a well-known fact that Stalin actually supported the Communist Party of Greece, first and foremost ideologically, and second with material support through allies Bulgaria and Albania and Yugoslavia. Yes, the Soviet Union didn't send any army to fight, but he could do anything because Greece was already under British occupation and American occupation. I would say that I wouldn't say that Stalin betrayed us, but he made priority to hold his gains in Romania and Poland, and then spread communism in countries like Greece. Um, and I would say that Tito made a bigger betrayal because he shut his borders to Greece and stopped supporting the Greek communists because they sided with Stalin and not with Tito. So I would blame Tito mostly if there was any kind of betrayal.
Okay, do you know that after the civil war in Greece, I think that there are 20,000 migrants from Greece, the young children who came
100,000.
to Poland.
100,000 people fled Greece through all the socialist countries.
Yes, and in Poland it was
In
20,000.
Poland, yeah, 20. Other hotspots were Czechia, Hungary, and the Soviet Union, I guess. So that's nice. What do they settle in Poland? Which parts? That's very interesting.
I was living in Warsaw, and my wife lived nearby Warsaw in this region of Warsaw. But she so now when I am in Poland, I am half of time in Warsaw, half of time in the small city of my family of my wife. But have you ever been in Poland?
I've been to Warsaw and I've been to Łódź. You call it Łódź.
Łódź.
Yeah.
Łódź is the most ugly city in Poland,
Really?
I think.
Yeah, I found it actually very ugly, but it had some museums and some. It had a factory, which was the where the revolution of not 1905. I guess
Yes,
1905.
1905. It
Yeah,
is.
the revolution of 1905 happened. So I went to that factory. It was owned by the Jews, I think, but due to the Holocaust, the owners perished, and it was nice. Well, I was completely wasted, but it was nice.
Yes, the Łódź before had big tradition, revolutionary. We can say that it was one of the fastest growing city in Europe. It was like Manchester. That it was the small village. And when the industrialization was starting in Poland, they creating the city from very little town to big industrial, and there was many factories, but the
Impressive.
people lived in slums, and but there were very strong and very radical socialist movement, and all this strike in 1905. It's a proof of this.
I guess that's why they didn't lynch me because I had a Stalin phone case,
Oh.
and I know that the far right is very active in Poland. So I went to a left wing city, so I was cool.
And what do you, because we can speak about many subjects, maybe do you have question or
Yeah. How is the movement in Poland now? If there is any strong communist movement, how democratic is Poland? Because you have the same party being elected, and it's very radical right. I guess it's conservative, let's say. And what is okay? Let's go with these two questions, and then I will ask one more when you finish.
okay,
So I don't. Yeah, I'm as pressure.
So communist movement in Poland is very weak, was totally destroyed, and we want to rebuild this movement. We have radical left in Poland, which is weak, but this radical left is most of this radical left is anti-communist. So we can say that they they are people social democratic who organize something with the red flag, but all the time they criticize Soviet Union, all the time they criticize the. We had a tradition. There was a party which name is Polish Socialist Party. It was the party which wanted to build independent Poland in the time when Poland didn't exist. And it was party which was the workers' party, leftist party, but in the time of the Russian Revolution, they started to be the anti-communist party also. So we have many people which are belonging to this tradition of PPS. So it's very complicated for communist movement to organize something, because in the same time we have to make the ideological struggle against fascist, against anti-communist, but also against radical left, which is more anti-communist than far right, I can say, because
Wasn't Pilsudski a member of the PPS?
yes, he was the creator of this party, and he was the creator of the journal of this party, Robotnik, and after he started to and also he was creator of the militant and the military organization of this organization in the time of revolution 1905. But after, he became the agent of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So he left socialist movement. He started to prepare the war and the organizing the Polish workers to be the collaborator of the Germans and Austrian against Russian. So he became nationalist and not socialist. But of course, this party existed when Piłsudski became the fascist dictator of Poland. There they were the people who belonging in PPS. They were persecuted. They go to prison. They organized strike, and so it is not Piłsudski and PPS. It's not the same. So it is like Mussolini and the Socialist Party of Italy. That he was very active member of this party, but after he changed his opinion. So the radical left in Poland is the most problem. It is the problem of the ideology that me and my comrades, we have to fight for reconstruction ideology of the Marxism and communism, because there are organizations anti-capitalist, but I think that for Poland, it's very good tradition of communist movement and the socialist state which existed before 1989, and now, for example, in the time of the epidemic COVID-19. People died because the hospitals don't work, and we can give example of hospital in socialist Poland, and it is socialism or barbarity. What do you want? If you want privatization of the medical healthcare, you will die in capitalism, and that's also. It is why we. But and this anti-capitalist radical left, they have problem, because they can't support socialist Poland. Because if you support publicly socialist Poland, they accuse you that you are Stalinist, you are responsible for the 100 million death, and you want to build Gulag and stuff. And they are the cowards. They don't want to. And for me, it's not problem if they say that you are Stalinist. I says, yes, I am Stalinist. I am proud of this, because Stalin, it is the person who created our state. Our state and our nation was condemned to be eliminated by Hitler. He wanted to make all the Poles the slaves of the Germans and exterminate them. And Stalin, he helped us to reconstruct our. If you were Warsaw, for example, was totally destroyed. and it is Stalin
Build,
who.
he built also Palazzi Culture.
Yes, 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 yes. But all the city was all Poland was built by communists. They want, we want decommunization of Poland. Yes. Do you want decommunization? Okay, destroy all the Poland, because the communists, it is the communists who built this.
I visited Poland and I heard that 85% of the city was destroyed or something like that.
Yes, yes. Warsaw
almost
was
completely.
totally destroyed, totally,
Yeah.
because Hitler, after Warsaw uprising, he decided that we have to punish Poles. All buildings have to be destroyed to make a message for other Poles that if you have make insurrection, anything will be stay untouched. And
I heard that after it was totally destroyed, they rebuilt it through old pictures, and that's why a lot of your buildings are looking old, despite not being that old. They have this
no. It's only Old Town. It's only Old Town which was renovated in the old style. But yes, but the center of Warsaw was renovated in the Soviet style, and it
socialist realism.
Yes, yes, and it is very, very good, because before this, Warsaw was a slums. Warsaw was the city without canalization, with this very small streets. With people, if you go to Warsaw before war, you have this casting, you have the shit everywhere, and Hitler destroyed it. And after, when they reconstruct, they don't reconstruct these slums, but they build the great buildings, a space with a lot of park, a lot of green area. Now you didn't see this, because now all this green area is taken by developers, is taken by the center commercial, and they liquidate this. But in 1980s, Warsaw was one of the most ecologic city in Europe, because everywhere was tree, was park, was forest, and now they decided, no. In center of the city, we have to build the bank, things for the bank, for the rich, and you ask.
Sorry. I wanted to ask about Stalin. How do other Polish people treat you when you say you are Stalinist? Because there is a lot of anti-communist propaganda in Poland, and even the left-wing Poles are against communism, and I have experienced this being there. How do they feel when you say you are Stalinist? Do they treat you hostile? Or how do they cope with this information?
When I am in Poland, I am not saying that I support Stalin. So I want to live. So it is.
Did you move in France this year, or are you years there?
No. It's I am living here 8 years. 8 years. In 2010, I was condemned for my activity politic. So I am the first Pole which have problem for propagating totalitarian society. So I am historic.
If we continue like this in Greece, with neoliberalism being pushed down our throats and police brutality and all that, I might join you in a couple of years.
Yes. No. You see, I am laughing because all these things which was in Poland, it's ridiculous. It was I was not beaten, I was not tortured, I was not in prison. I was condemned for 100 days, but I could pay, and it was very cheap to pay, not go to prison. But I couldn't find a work in Poland, work, because I was historic. Yes. So I became, but it was good for me, because I became physical worker. And now I am proud of this, because when you made your physical job, nobody ask what is your position politic. You work well, okay, you can stay.
Yes.
They don't speak with you. If you want to work like teacher, you want to have the great, very good job, they will ask you many questions. But if you now I am working in France in storehouse in the temperature minus 25 degree. It's they don't ask me question what is my position politic, because it's not easy to find people who want work there.
Yeah, and France is also very progressive on that. After the years of the lead in Italy, that there were a lot of fighting and some acts of terrorism, France welcomed the Italian communists who fled Italy and went to France. And a lot of Greeks during the military dictatorship here, 1967, 1974, they fled to France, whether they were either they were left-wing, centrist, center-right. They fled to France and found a safe haven there. There are a lot of Greeks in Paris right now, and intellectuals like Helen Glycadzi-Arveler and Costa Gavras and Nikos Castoriadis is dead, but yeah, there's a wide movement there. A lot of Greeks went there. And I like France for accepting people of any ideology, as long as they respect the republic and they just live their lives there.
I would like to say that in the chat is another comrade from Switzerland. I sent him invitation. Maybe he will come or not. But I spoke with him, so I can. I am not Harry. So if communists from other countries want to speak, I invite them. So comrade Ginos, comrade Ritkat, I send you invitation. If you want to come, you know what to do. So you also asked me about situation politic. So speaking about the politic of Poland, it's waste of time, because Polish politics is made by the USA. It's USA decide what is our politic. That's USA decided that now we have to expel the ambassadors from the Russia. The USA decided that they are the US army in Poland. Then we have to make all this aggressive politic against Russia. That we have to buy the gas from USA, which is very expensive, much more expensive than Russian, and in Poland, the all these party which are in parliament, they have it is rivalization. Which party was the most how to say? Is the will be servile to USA. Yes. And the social we for example in August when was the election in Belarus, the Social Democrat wanted to help the organizing putsch in Belarus, but the extreme right also wanted to make the putsch in Belarus, and they sending the message to USA. It's we the most servile to you. And now when the Biden is new president, because Biden in the campaign said that in Europe we have authoritarian countries. The most authoritarian country, it is Russia. But we have also authoritarian state in Hungary and Poland. He said this in the campaign, and wow. Now the new government of Poland they are scared that Biden will organize Maidan in Poland, and they will choose the liberals to make rules. This so they when United States expelled the diplomat from Russia. In the same day, they expelled diplomats from Poland. The United States didn't needed to say this. They understand that they have to. So it's very. it's shame for me, because
Um,
I speak Russian language. I knew in emigration I have contact with people from many countries, also from Russia, and you know that it's complicated.
yeah. Well, Poland. I think there must be some truth that Hungary and Poland are not very democratic anymore. They're becoming more populist, and
Yes,
America
I'm not
doesn't
agree
want
with
this.
this. I'm not
Yes.
agree with this. For example, I can give you example of the media in Poland. In
Mhm.
Poland, we have situation that we have public media which are controlled by the extreme right party, and we have the corporate media which supported the liberal opposition. So we have two media which one another attacked all the
Yeah.
time. In media public, they say that the liberals are the motherfuckers, and they say, made this again, and it is very good. It is very good because I can watch this media, and I know that all politicians in Poland, they are motherfuckers. In France, you don't have this, because in France, they all media say that Macron is good. You
Yeah,
don't have
it's pretty much the same here. Yeah, but
s-
the only issue is that there's a lot of let's say far right policies coming from Hungary, and let's say the right wing in Poland. So I think it's understandable for a person like Biden that these leaders, Orban and who is your guy?
Kaczyński.
Kaczynski, yeah.
Kaczyński, Morawiecki.
They congratulated Trump and they were more enthusiastic towards him. So he wants to tell them, back it off. I don't think he will make Maidan, of course, but he wants to tell them, look, I'm the new president here. You should do as I say.
Yes, but you know, Biden is not interesting because Biden is old, and I think that he will die soon. But
He's not
this
that
is
older.
yes, but he was ill. He was ill with brain or something like this. So, so in Poland they are scared because the vice president is the Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris, yeah.
Yes, and she declared herself like feminist.
Mhm.
And in Poland, they made a war against women. In Poland, they
Yeah.
ban abortion, and in the last years, the most important fight against government, it is women who wanted to fight for the liberation of the abortion law. We have big demonstration in 2016, and now also we had the demonstration on 2020 in October and November. It was very big demonstration all Poland, in big city, small city, that the people they are demonstrating against government, against church, and they fight it. So, and in Poland you have the mentality that you are the slave from you are the American slave. But now, when the new president could be the feminist, and she decided that in Poland you have to make the free abortion right, she will be not happy that the one of the
big parties. Yeah.
yes, they are against it. And so it is why they want to show that because if USA wants to go out the PIS and from ruling, it is like this. They give the order, and 1 week later, Kaczynski and others go out
Understandable.
because the U.S. Army is here. U.S.
Yeah,
Army is in Poland,
you have
so
bases in Poland, in Romania, in Turkey, in Greece, in Germany, everywhere.
yes, and nobody control them. For example, in last week, we had information that because of this complicated situation between Ukraine and Russia, they send, I think, 50 or 60 aircraft
Yeah.
very to Poland.
Yeah.
And nobody asked Poles what do we think about this. Nobody. They come to here to Poland like this, and we have frontier with frontier no
Frontier.
Frontier.
Frontier, the border. Frontier.
Yes, border. We have border. Tu parles français?
Un petit peu.
Un petit peu, parce que pour moi, c'est mieux parler en français. No, man. We have to continue in English. But when I speak English, sometimes
No, frontier is also used in the English language for a more formal way. Because, as you know, the English language comes from Germanic. But when the Normans conquered England, they introduced a lot of French words. So in English, there are two words. If you say border, I think it's both correct, but the frontier is more formal. Frontier, it's like the French words are always more formal. So if you speak French, and some words you can understand from English.
I would like to say that in Paris there are big community of Greek members of the Communist Party of Greece.
Yeah, I told you they were. They left due to junta, and there's another wave leaving due to economic crisis, and most of them are very left wing.
Yes, but no. But I said about people in your age. I not said about people very because one time it was the I think. It was the anniversary of the October Revolution, 100th anniversary of October Revolution. Yeah. Yes, there were a meeting organized in front of the building where Lenin and how she was named Inessa Armand. They worked to make this journal Iskra, and there was a meeting, I think 200 person was there, and there was also the delegation from the Communist Party of Greece. I made photo with them. So, but it was the time that I wasn't capable to speak English. Now I want to build the relation with all these immigrants which are in Paris, because in Paris are left from all over the world, from the America Latin, Africa, Asia. And but before this I only speak Polish, and for example I watched some of your videos, and there was one video, I think it was the Q&A for 3,000 subs, and you started in English, and after you started speaking in Greek, and I was making dishes, washing the dishes, so I listen and I was thinking about something else, and now after this you started speak Greek. Oh my God, what is this?
Yeah, you thought you forgot the English language, right? Yes. When I did my 3,000 subscribers to the Q&A, I split it in two parts. So I had the English first and then the Greek. Yeah. That was interesting, very nice story, and I'm glad you watched a couple of my videos. I found about you now. You said you know Comrade King, and I was eager to engage with you, have a little discussion.
Yes, but I appreciate all conversation which I had, but the question I am not agree with his analysis of the processes of the restoration of. I am not agree about Khrushchev, and
I don't agree either. We had a big argument on that. If you go to my channel, you will see the
video.
I
listened. I listened to this conversation.
From mine or from his? Because we made two different discussions.
From his.
Yeah, you have to watch mine too, which is the second one.
It is not the same.
The first, it was too long and we derailed, but the first we have order, so we touch all the subjects, and I think you will like it more. I performed much better in the second part.
But I didn't finish about Polish. So
Okay, tell me that. Tell me that.
I said that the situation was very very bad, but when I started to make this channel, the Odrodzenie Komunizmu, it is rebirth of communism in Polish, people started changing mind, and these people with social democratic anti-capitalist view, they starting to looking different to the communist movement. And also all the people was sure that when I start to speak about communism, when with my name, my face, that after 3 weeks or 1 month somebody arrest me, somebody killed me, because they are this history. But this channel is 4 years, and young Poles starting to changing their mind. And before this, 1 or 2 years ago, we wanted to join to the Polish Communist Party, because we have a Polish Communist Party, but it is party created in 2002, and it is party which don't do nothing, but they were registered in 2002, and it is good name, so we wanted to join them. But they have very bureaucratic status, and also the leader of this party is the revisionist, not revisionist. I can say that he is the left. He's social democrat. Social democrat.
Yeah.
Yes, he, for example, make interview about Stalin when he criticized Stalin in the same way when the anti-communism. So after this, we decided that we don't want to be a member of Communist Party of Poland. And in January of this year, we starting to building Polish Workers' Party. Polish Workers' Party, it is the same name of the party which built socialism in Poland after Second World War. So they take the historical name of the Communist Party of Poland, which existed before Second World War, and we also take the historical name of the party, Polish Workers' Party. So we are in the I wrote the manifest of this party. It's 50 pages. If you want to you can read it in Polish, but now we are in the processes of writing the program of this party. We have commission in many subjects, discussion. I think that program will be ready in 1 month or 2 months, and after this program we're starting to now it's not very big, but I speak about party because there are not many people, but our channel is very popular, and I think that if we finish this bureaucratic job with the writing statute, writing program, and try to organize all these people who watch our communist videos, maybe something will change, because last year was very important, I think, because it was the year of the radicalization. It was the year of the big struggles, not only these women's struggles, but also we had the other struggles. We have the peasants who protested, and I hope that in 2021 it will be workers class start to protest, and it's my hope, because something which different me from the other leftists in Poland is the most important difference. It's not that I said I like Stalin, you don't like Stalin. The most important difference is that I am a worker and they don't. They work in the university, they are the teachers, I know, but nobody know how to work in the factory, how to work in the building industry. When they see worker, they don't know how to speak with worker, and I know, because I'm in French. Before this, I worked also in building industry with Polish workers. So
Understandable. Well, thank you for having me. I unfortunately will have to go since it's getting late in Greece. But since I see that in your channel you have like discussions with a lot of fellows here. We can have a discussion between each other, like not
Yeah.
like this that I jumped into Mr.
Yes, yes,
Prasad.
yes, 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 yes.
So if you can, next weekend will be cool. I guess you have.
No,
Your...
next weekend it's first May demonstration,
Oh yes, yes, yes. Oh
and
yeah, it's 1st May.
in
Saturday, yes.
Paris it will be very big, I think.
Yes, yes, yes.
And 2nd May also, I want to participate
Okay.
in the demonstration.
That's understandable.
It is about Odessa. It is in 2014 the people were killing in Odessa, and so next weekend no, but
The other one?
weekend after, of course, we
All right.
can. It's Dzień Pobiedy по-русски. Dzień Pobiedy, Victory Day in Russia.
Oh, the Victory Day is in 9. So
Yes, yes.
I hope you will be available on that weekend.
No, we can speak. We 8 or 9. We'll continue discussion with emails. So
yes, let's say unofficially for 8, and we will fix it when we go closer. If you have any issues, we can postpone it.
Okay. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you for having me.
Hi.
Bonne nuit.
Toi aussi.